Born to Achieve. Born to Achieve. Welcome to Born to Achieve podcast, the show that inspires and motivates you to unlock your full potential and achieve your goals. With your host, Warren Andrew Pinder. Let's get started on this week's episode of Born to Achieve. Born to Achieve.
I am born to achieve greatness, and so are you. On this episode of the Born to Achieve Greatness podcast, I have with me Tevin, right? Tevin, give me your last name, right? Tell me something about it, and let's explain exactly what we do and how we are leveling up to try and make this podcast great for young persons, inspire them to let them know that, you know, wherever they are, that there's a greater place.
Oh, yes. My name is Tevin Bailey. I'm the CEO, owner of Chop House Media Group. We bring people in essentially to guide them through podcasting, and just to guarantee that people of all walks of life, generations can stay consistent in the content creation space as much as possible, assisting with any and all needs. And, just thank you so much for having me on the show, of course.
Yeah, it's great, man. Welcome. Like I said to you, it's just important because I feel so that you and I have to get to know each other because, like I say, we're going to take this podcast to new heights and, to the world. I'm coming from the Bahamas. I'm here in the Bahamas, you're in the States. And we're going to connect with a synergy that is going to make it relevant, right? And one of the topics I thought when I was thinking about it, I really said, interestingly, let's talk about social media, right? And social media made me do it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see how we could coin a conversation around that our listeners, right, would understand the gravity of social media. What's your take on that?
Social media is prevalent, and I think that, a lot of people feel pressured because of social media to do things that aren't necessarily for them. And then you have people who are like us, right, who try to find our way through social media. So, social media made me do it is such a great term because one way or another, like content creation should be what made you do it, so whether that content creation is on social media, like a platform like Instagram, TikTok, what have you, or even just content creation in terms of a podcast that can live on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or you just doing content creation for YouTube or even just for the sake of having memories, so I think that the connotation should be more so content creation made me do it, but social media made me do it is a heavy influence on a lot of people, especially a lot of people my age and younger. All it takes is seeing one person blow up doing something and then everybody wants to do it. I don't know if you saw even last year with the whole Cat Williams interview and how everybody wanted to do an interview where they were exposing people left, right, and sideways or anything they felt like they were done wrong. Like that was essentially social media making them do it. It wasn't necessarily because they felt bitter, or maybe they did feel bitter, but they felt like now it's the time to voice their bitterness because of it. And I'm not even saying that to say that Cat Williams was bitter in what he was saying, but, it's just a lot of the imitators after the fact more so came off as bitter. So, social media is a wild place and a lot of people definitely get a lot of influence through social media. But I think that, if you make it to the point where you can just be free with how you create your own content, be genuine to yourself, be genuine to the people around you, have real genuine goals for what you want the content to do, no matter what platform you're on, then, social media really wouldn't make you do it. But peer pressure is very prevalent now more than ever.
Wow. How much of the content is real? When we talk about content, how much is real, man?
How much is real?
Yeah.
If I had to guess, maximum 10%.
Wow. So that made that's powerful because what person's actually following it just all made up?
Yeah. So, people are watching it thinking that it's 100% accurate to people's lives, but it just isn't. Even with my content is pretty true to myself, but at the same time, it's only a fraction of who I am as a person. So it's like, I'm not giving you my all of every facet of my life, my woes, my troubles, my worries. I'm not giving it all in my content. So it's like, it's not something that people can look at my content and have like a definitive look on like who I am overall as a person. It's just more so of just like a part of me that I'm willing to give to the internet, and
Exactly.
that's me being a genuine person. So when you have people who aren't genuine, you know what I mean? Like it's that's even less.
So
So
that could really render to a lot of scams and so forth too.
a lot of
Very
scams.
careful.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people trying to, well, I'm not going to start naming scams,
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Let's not do that.
but yes, a lot of scams. Yes.
Yeah. Because it's just interesting. Like I just learned recently, right? That really, I mean, I knew that, but so much people emphasize on the bad side of social media, right? Not really taking into consideration that just as much bad as they can view on social media, there is good. You only have to search. You only have to really just type in that you want to learn something positive and not listen to someone else's life.
Mhm.
Expand on that a bit. Like how it can be used for the better good of self improvement.
I mean, just definitely just learning a new trade is always good. Anything that you can imagine doing for yourself, there's at least one video on it somewhere in the internet. You know, um, my generation coined the phrase YouTube University.
Hmm.
So a lot of the things that, we learned, came from YouTube, especially with me. A lot of what I know from photography, I was always doing videography, like, taught through, actual school and things of that
Hmm.
nature, actual people in real time. But when I started teaching myself photography a little bit less than 10 years ago, YouTube was the only place I really knew to get the information from, and that leveled me up to a point of even jumpstarting my world into entrepreneurship. Even
Hmm.
just finding avenues of like how I can make money using my camera, things of that nature. When I first started getting into podcasts, just not even so much learning outright from like a instructional video, but just even
Hmm.
observing or listening to other people's podcasts to see like what people talk about, to see what type of viewership people get based on, what type of guests they may have, or the type of subject matter the specific podcast may be about, or the level of consistency people post, things of that nature, like even the analytical side of things that people don't particularly look at on a day-to-day basis. And nowadays, now it's the same thing. We had YouTube University when I was coming up. Now it's TikTok University. So it's like if you can have any idea or any thought or anything, you can type it into TikTok as a search engine and you'll find a video on it. And that's been surprising me lately.
That's on TikTok.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I've been surprised myself just on the things that I've been able to look up just by going on TikTok and, just typing it in and seeing like, oh, okay, this is how you fillet a fish, or, just anything. Like that's just an example, but there's so many different things that you can learn from there now. And, I don't know how much longer TikTok's going to be around given, legislative and what's going on in the United States and everything like that. But it's a lot of learning that you can do, but you got to know what it is that you're looking for one. And for two, you got to be open to the idea of learning and not just scrolling. And I
Yeah.
think that that's kind of like where the edutainment line kind of gets blurred.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to, just kind of be entertained without actually feeling like they have to learn anything from anything that they're watching. But if you can kind of find that line of, being entertaining, but also showing people a way of learning something, you can garner more traction that way. And people will appreciate it a lot more. It'll be a lot more mindless and things of that nature too. But, it's definitely gotten to the point where self-improvement, like through the internet, is super easy. Like to the point where it's like people who say they can't cook, I find it hard to believe. Every recipe in the world is
Is
on the
there?
internet. So, and
Yeah.
they give you videos on it, whether it be TikTok, whether it be YouTube, wherever. You can watch a video. It will show you how it's supposed to be made. It'll show you all the ingredients. It will show you what they did, how they did it, when they did it. You know what I mean? So, and those videos live forever. It's not like, it's not like it'll just disappear after 30 days or anything like that. Like you can watch a video on how to fry chicken from 10 years ago and
Yeah.
everything that they said will still apply to today. So, it's just one of those things where it's like self-improvement. Like I've learned a lot about working out, different techniques or different like workouts that do different things for the muscles, what types of food you can ingest for your diet, how you can improve in that, guided meditations. There's a lot of different things in terms of, self-improvement. It's just a matter of wanting to do it yourself. And,
Yeah.
that's kind of where it kind of gets tricky when it comes to like people And just the way humanity is going, it's just people aren't really feeling like they need to overly improve in a lot of places as much as they feel like they can just find a tribe wherever they at and just be comfortable in whatever they are.
Thank you for joining today's podcast. We'll be right back.
Achieve Man, written by Warren Andrew Pinder and Dominique Bradford. This book passionately focuses on the challenges women have been made to go through and how to overcome them. In some cultures, being a woman disadvantages the girl child. This book carefully exposes the hurdles you might face. This masterpiece is the ultimate self-help guide for women. It reveals your true purpose and identity. Get your copy today. Available from Amazon.
We now return to today's podcast.
You know, it's funny, the last election, right? The last election there in the United States was won on social media. Would you say so?
Yes, 100%. I think the last 2 or 3
Yeah.
off the strength of social media. So
The probability of someone being successful on social media, what's the ing that they have to really have? What is it that it really takes for someone listening to us right now and saying, "Man, look here, that's an alternative for success."
I mean, honestly, consistency. That's it.
Yeah, I
Consistency would
believe
be,
that a lot.
you know, consistency is undefeated.
You know, I dabbled in TikTok a bit, right? You go on my TikTok page, make it make sense, right? I'll give you an example. Just thinking about climate change, eh? One day, I'm in construction. I'm on a site, right? And I'm like, man, it's really, really hot. But, if we don't take care of the environment, you're not going to be able to work out there in these days, right? So I had the young man on the site fill up a barrel with water, right? And they didn't know that. So I said, man, let's fill up a bottle of water. Just record me this right now. And I'm like, wait, we got to do something with climate change. You got to go do something with climate change. And, if you don't want, it's hot. Today it's hot. It's hot. I got to cool off. And I jumped in wholesale, all my clothes and everything in a wheelbarrow, with water, just to as a creative thought for persons to understand that, climate change is real and, we got to do things about it. So using social media like that, and like you say, you can go far. It's a powerful tool to really get your message out there. Got to be funny too. People like it for them to follow you. But, some things it call for drastic things to be done. But that's really cool. So like when we're talking right now about in that social media space, you just said one, just focus on what it is that you really want to learn, whether it's to cook, whether it's to improve yourself, the gym, or, whatever topic that you are interested in. Like you said, the main thing is to stop scrolling and just paying attention to everyone else and be specific as to, that would be advice to young persons using social media to better themselves.
Yeah, 100%. There's a fine line between self-improvement and comparison.
Yeah.
So in terms of like self-improvement is, you're watching things for the sake of figuring out lessons, techniques, things that you can take away and execute in real time. Comparison is just watching somebody and wishing that you had their life. And I think that, a lot of people, even me, like I've been victim of this myself, like where I've seen people do stuff and I was like, how come I'm not doing that? Or how come I'm not in that space? How come I'm not in that room? But I'm also a firm believer that, everything works out the way it's supposed to. Divine timing is also real. So whatever you're supposed to be, you'll always end up there. Whatever you're meant to have, you'll always end up getting one way or another. So, just being more so in that mindset will definitely keep you forward and definitely keep you in a learning mindset where you can't execute on things versus being comparative. But, it's not easy. When you see people stunting money, driving Lamborghinis, or they have the 6-pack that you want, or, if the wife or husband you may want, or, like somebody beautiful, significant other, or, like anything, the house you may want, it could be anything. It's easy for you to like wish upon, that being for you, or you feeling like you're not where you're supposed to be in your stage of life, So especially now, it's like kids nowadays, and I'm not that far from a kid, but, but kids nowadays, they're like 2021, like Kai Cenat, he's a great example. He's like 21, 22 years old. He's one of the biggest influencers in the world right now, making millions of dollars sitting in front of a computer every day. You know,
Yeah.
so it's like having millions of people watch his streams, celebrities come on, and it's just, you know, him just being him playing
Wow.
video games sometimes, you know, and it's like, it's easy for a 22-year-old to look at Kai Cenat and be like, how come that's not me?
Wow.
You know what I mean? But it's like,
Wow.
there's a reason why that's not you. There's a reason why, you know, the things happen the way for him that it happened for him, you know, and things could happen for you too. You know what I mean? You could be a millionaire by 30, you know, you could be a millionaire by 40, you know, even, I'm a big fan of music, especially rap music. You got people like 2 Chainz, people like Rick Ross, like artists like that who didn't even become successful until they hit like past 35.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So like they've been living their whole life without any real success in the music industry. Once they got to the mid to late 30s, early 40s, that's when they started to get real traction to the point where they're super successful household names.
That's all because consistency.
Exactly. It's about consistency, you know, and them just being confident in who they were and executing without feeling like they had to overly compare, you know,
Yeah.
and it's like everybody's journey is different. So it's really tough because, like I said, social media is so many people different walks of life that you can easily insert yourself just visually into. But it's just like you have to really, now more than ever, you have to really know yourself.
Yeah.
And part of knowing yourself is knowing what's right for you, what isn't right for you, and being confident that whatever level of success that you want, you'll be able to achieve just in being consistent in whatever space you decide to be in.
It's powerful. So you've just given us, a lot of good about social media. Give us some warning for those young listeners out there who really seeing this and think I could do it. But give them some warning so that they don't, you know, they could aim, but let them fall where it's real.
Okay, warnings. For one, I would say don't fall for the scams. There's going to be a lot of people out here. You know, I don't want to not everybody is a scam, but there's going to be a lot of coaches out here that aren't real coaches. A lot of influencers who don't have real influence. A lot of people that will just do anything to sell you a product that they don't really endorse. So, you know, for one, don't fall for that. For two, don't feel like you have to copy and paste somebody else's success to be successful, you know, so definitely be unique as much as possible. It's very easy to find some trendy type of content and decide to do it. You know, even I'll give a great example. I think that the OnlyFans trend of whatever, you know, people decide to do on that platform is something that, you know, it's easy for people, specifically young people, to look at and be like, okay, this is something I can get into, but just know that this is like a compromising thing to be doing, you know, just creating content in general, especially creating content for, you know, adult platforms and things of that nature. Like these are things that will live on forever. So when we're talking about the longevity of your body, the longevity of your mental health, the longevity of your relationships with your family, when you start to have children, you know, these are like things that a lot of people don't necessarily consider when they get into those types of fields and things of that nature. And even just in content creation in general, you know what I mean? There could be anything. You could be a prankster. You know, like if you go around Walmart, you know, doing pranks on people, or you the one that, you know, gets arrested all the time for doing dumb stuff and posting it on the internet. You know, that it's still longevity on your life and on your relationships. So, you know, you just gotta be real mindful. Don't do anything that will get you arrested. Don't do anything that will get you in a compromising position, to the point where if you did decide that you wanted to pivot in a part of your life, like let's say you're 22 years old and you want to do content creation, you do it for like 5 years and you decide you want to go back to the 9-to-5 space. Well, now your content is part of your name. So when your future employer looks you up and sees the type of content you've been creating, like that's going to be a consideration. So just be mindful of those types of things and know that it's not the end of the world if it doesn't happen immediately.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of immediate success is something that people are always looking for. And that's always been a pitfall. It's just really just giving up too fast. You know, kind of just to speak on what I said before, just like, you know, success can happen at any moment. You know, this
I'm gonna go back and play this right and find out that exact statement and send that to my daughter, right? That's something that we have to tell our children. You understand? I said, I have a beautiful daughter. I'm like, hey, tone it down. You got to understand exactly, the ramifications of this. So that's really good advice given to our listeners, bro. That's extremely good advice. A few moments ago, you spoke about mindset, right? Let's talk a little bit about leveling up your mindset. Whether it's for you to just succeed as a young man, right? Where did you click? How did you level up to put yourself in the space, bro?
Now you're asking all the great questions. I don't have a set day on that. Honestly, I don't know. I feel like I haven't hit my pinnacle yet.
Wow.
So it's kind of like my life has been in phases.
Yeah.
I have many phases. I think anything before high school was a phase. High school itself was a phase. Then I had my college phase. I used to work at the Coca-Cola Museum in downtown Atlanta.
Great.
That was a phase that kind of bled into the college phase and bled out of it because I worked there longer than I did once I graduated college. I had my 9-to-5 phase after that. And now I'm in my, in my entrepreneurial phase. So it's, they've all been learning experiences, and I can't really say there was one definitive moment where things started to click. I think that more than anything, when I realized that I needed to live my life for myself more than what other people may have wanted for me, more than what anybody had expectations for in terms of my life or what they think I should be doing. That's when things started to really click. And that really wasn't until, honestly, the Coca-Cola phase until now, So we're talking about like 8 years, the last 8 years or so. So, you know what I mean? Especially the last 5 for sure. But just trying to be more mindful of, a lot of the things that, I'm ingesting, both, internally in terms of food, but like, knowledge, the types of people that I hang around, the different circles that I've been adjusted with, being more mindful of just like my mental health as well.
Yeah.
In terms of, being able to meditate a lot more. I've had, instances of going to therapy as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I can't really say things clicked in one specific moment, honestly, because I can count a bunch of moments where things felt like they clicked and then a bunch of moments where it unclicked. And then, and when it's kind of like, you never really know how much things really click until other things start unclicking, and then it's like the things that you have to apply it in real time. It's like, everybody is a good person until the world ends.
It's true.
And then that survival mentality hits, and that, that you have to really defend for yourself and everything like that. Like those when you really see what people are really capable of, So,
wow.
It's kind of like the same thing. Like anybody with a back against a wall mentality or anyone who's ever been in those types of situations, that's when you really see more of who they really are. You know what I mean? The people that like have their last dollar and they still give you 50 cents of it.
Yes.
It's easy to do $1 when you have 100.
Yeah.
But when you only have that $1 and you got to make it work and you give someone half of it, like that's true character. So, I mean, I've had situations like that where I was at my last and I gave, it was situations where not even money, but just like my time, my resources, just my insights on things. When I just couldn't give it to people, I still gave it. And honestly, a lot of the time I didn't get it back, to this day. So, and it's not to say that I'm even looking for it back in a lot of instances, but it's just one of those things where it's like, these are the defining moments of who everybody is. It's not always when everything is up, but it's like, what do you do when things are down? What do you do when things aren't going the way you want it to go? Or when people aren't around, like who you are when you by yourself, So, that's a great question. Like I said, I can't really say I really reached, my absolute pinnacle. I still got millions of dollars to make. So,
yeah, man, that's that
day.
Yeah.
Now for a commercial break.
Achieve Men, written by Warren Andrew Pinder. In this book, you will learn the 7 steps to achieving your dreams and goals. given the vision to share how the acronym of the word achieve can be used systematically in your day-to-day life. Each of us is given a unique gift from God. Get your copy today. Available in print, ebook, and audiobook from Amazon.
We now return to today's podcast.
But you just described your journey, right? And the metaphor that you used, that phases. So many persons, right, are going through, because there's two questions. You thought that was a great question that I asked you before, right? But I'm setting you up, right? So many persons are going through the same journey, bro. They're going through it and not realizing that, the phases are there, that this just a journey. They're just trying to find themselves. How you describe that, persons should really think about it. This is the phase of life that I'm doing, but you control it ultimately, right? You control the phases, because it can easily go south, right?
Yeah.
It can easily go south. The big question, I want you to just finish this, right? Through the 8 years, I was finding my what?
Through the 8 years, I was finding my purpose.
Oh, bro, that's it. That's all I was thinking about. Actually, that's what it's all about. Because I listened to your exuberance, right? I listened to you talk about how you achieved that and how you got to where you are right now. And I'm like, bro, this young man understands his purpose, and help our listeners, like who have not maybe entwined on that journey. Help them to lead them to let them know that's what that inner, that wrestle, what they're really dealing with. Like you spoke about from a job, right? You were doing well on a job. You talk about learning and how you got into the content creation and so forth. And it's like you're in a space now, they can hear it. They can actually hear it, that you're in a good space. That's really proven that, that's what you love. That's your passion, right? That's your purpose.
Yeah. Honestly, it's a one day at a time situation. I'm a firm believer in you never stop growing. Is no matter
I
what,
believe in that.
Whatever walk of life you may be in, and then on top of it too, like, I'm in a good space now, but, it just takes a lot of work, what I mean? And it's not like, work in terms of like, like noticeable work, but, like I gotta write nothing down or no homework or anything, but just knowing like what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And a lot of that takes trial and error. And a lot of it takes, even adversity, what I mean? So even like last year, for example, last year was a real tough year for me just off the strength that I had 4 deaths in the family. And
I would have never known that listening to you.
So it's like I had that happen. I had a bad breakup last year as well.
Wow.
That happened like.
That's a loss though. That's a loss, bro.
You know what I mean? So it's a lot. It was a lot of losses that I took, what I mean? And even just in business, like trusting in the wrong people that, ended up leading into like, more financial hardships than I could have anticipated. But, it took one day at a time of just recalibrating everything, recalibrating my mind, my spirit, how I approach different situations, and more importantly, just letting go of the things I can't control.
Yeah.
So it's like I can't control other people's actions. I can't control, whatever God has in store for me. So it's just always been like I have to let that go more than anything. And, me being who I am, I always want to have control on as many parts of my life as possible. I've always been wanting my independence, and I always looked at independence as having control over as many parts of your life as possible. But there's still many parts that you can't control, So, I mean, it really, finding purpose is a one day at a time thing. And honestly, purpose changes, like.
Yeah, that's true. That's important.
Phases, it's this kind of like one of those things where my purpose has changed so many times that it kind of showed me the consistencies of it all, So like even when I was working a job, like when I was working at Coca-Cola, like that was the first time I really picked up a camera in terms of doing it for money. Anything else that I had done before that point, I was in film school, yeah, but it wasn't for the sake of learning how to be an entrepreneur. It was mainly for, learning the craft, learning the artistic side, the creative side of things. And, it definitely was a helpful experience. But, that part of that phase was me learning what it meant to like, what if I was to do this independently, and then slowly but surely lead me down this path that got me here. Yeah. So, even just learning the experiences of like, even just being able to have conversations like this really came from that same job, because working at the Coca-Cola Museum, for the listeners who've never been, definitely you can come to Atlanta. It still exists. It's still there. But basically what it is, it's a museum, but it's also an attraction as well.
Right.
And, if you know Coca-Cola, their whole brand is, you got to be happy all the time.
Exactly.
No matter what's going on.
Exactly.
So it's just kind of like one of those things where, it forced me out of my comfort zone when it comes to like speaking to people, because essentially we're talking to people from all around the world every single day. Hundreds upon thousands of people on a weekly basis of just like conversations that whether you do want to have them or not, you got to have them regardless, because you got to smile in their face. You got to give them a can of Coke, what I mean? And you got to be able to just really engage with them positively no matter what. And I never really necessarily knew the power of that until that job, so that demeanor, definitely I was able to carry into so many different parts of my life in terms of being able to talk to people, to discuss their problems in entrepreneurship or just how I can solve their problems, being able to mediate situations over the phone when I was working other jobs after that, just being able to build relationships with people from a variety of different walks of life. A lot of my skills came from that phase of life, and I was able to just build upon that, just given the rest of my life skills that I've gotten since then. And, it's all about purpose, right? So if purpose is for me to be an entrepreneur, one way or another, I have to communicate with people. And because that's the only way I can maintain my business and, more importantly, my relationships. I'm a firm believer that relationships will carry you further than anything, in any part of life, business, personal, whatever. The relationships that you garner will get you into so many different rooms and so many different opportunities and get you to the places that you're supposed to be in. So, having that mentality also is just kind of like a good way of, building purpose. Whoever you are, wherever you are, if you maintain good relationships with people, you'll find your way wherever you need to go, and even with you, right? Like with the Achieve Movement Inc., and everything that you do with that. Like, what were some of the things that, made you get into that purpose and kind of led you down that path?
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Born to Achieve. Born to Achieve. We hope you found it informative, inspiring, and motivating. Born to Achieve. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family. Stay focused on your goals, and we'll see you on the next episode of Born to Achieve.
Take advantage of this incredible opportunity. Sign up today and claim your free ebook at www.borntoachievegreatness.com. Follow us on Facebook at Achieve Movement Inc. Get your copy of Exploring Achieveland, A Journey to Realize Your Dreams, Motivational Stories of Kindness, Inspiring Stories for Kids on Amazon and Kindle.